guns shoot really well, very pleasant to shoot, but if you don't know how to run them, you might as well stay home.
If you default to your basic training, which is, just hold a little off their back and send it, you're not going to make it.
They're giving you a guess.
Welcome to the Built to Hunt podcast, brought to you by the team of hunt advisors at the Huntin Fool magazine, where we are dedicated to helping our members go on more hunts with better information. Join Huntin Fool today at huntinfool.com.
All right, welcome to another Built to Hunt podcast today. We decided today that we want to bring in some of the most brilliant minds in the industry. And so I have brought on a couple of my close friends and cohorts in the industry at Gunwerks to discuss a few things today. So Austin Atkinson here, and I have three special guests. I'll let them introduce and talk all about themselves. But we have Neal Emery, Garrett Wall from Gunwerks, and my good friend Kregg Thomassen, who's been involved with Gunwerks for a very long time. Welcome, guys, today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Neal, why don't you tell us a little bit for the listeners how long you've been at Gunwerks and what your job description is there. I know you're enjoying it, it looks like. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
You bet. I'm really kind of the newbie comes to officially working at Gunwerks. Been here a little over a year now, though we've worked kind of through a partnership with my previous employer, Hornady, for a number of years. So I was at Hornady for 14 years before coming over here, and had the fortune of being able to attend some events with Gunwerks over the years, do a shooting school and so on, teach a reloading class, actually right when their facility opened out down in Burlington. So while I wasn't necessarily working here, I got to take part in some of the historic events around here over the years as well. So PR is kind of what I've probably my main job, working on advertising and editorial creation, working with writers, things like that. Something I did for many years at Hornady. It's pretty neat to be able to do that, to work with writers, especially, the fun part obviously is taking people on hunts and things like that. I've gotten to go all over the world and do some really cool things, which is great. But it's not just that. There's a lot of time working on the computer and so on, which is, as we've all found over the years, counterproductive to hunting is too much office time sitting in front of a computer. And
yeah.
When you're on the wrong side of 40, that just really catches up to you fast. So something I'm working on. Nice to live at some elevation now in a place that at like Cody area where there's just so much to do outside. So I'm super pumped about that.
Awesome. Garrett, how is the weather up there in Cody?
It was snowing this weekend and then 67 today. So it's got a mind of its own up here, but we'll take it.
Perfect. Now you're sitting at the Gunwerks headquarters. Tell us about your job there and what you're working on now.
Yeah, you bet. Kregg and I were kind of a package deal. I'll do a little introduction with him as well, but it was just almost 11 years now. We just kind of hit 10 years this last summer, but Austin, as you know, Kregg will get you into some, interesting events in life, and this Gunwerks adventure was no different, but Kregg was approached by Aaron a decade ago, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, we're going to this little town in Wyoming, and we're going to meet some guys that are into long range shooting." And so Kregg and I jumped in a plane and flew up here, and heck, 10 years later, here we are still trying to build guns and do shooting schools and get out on a few hunts and having a lot of fun. So I'm involved kind of day to day with the sales team, dabble a little bit in the marketing department, get to play with the training group a little bit as well. That's a really fun part of our business. And like I said, Kregg and I were kind of a package deal. We kind of came on board together, and Kregg, as usual, is out conquering the world and doing things and helping us sell guns and doing trade shows with us and doing some hunts. And went with me on that muskox hunt to a Nunivak last year. We had a lot of fun and got in a little trouble up there, but seems like anywhere there's fun or trouble, Kregg is not very far behind. So I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, Kregg, but that's kind of me. So
I guess. Okay. Amen. Agree.
Yeah,
Agree to all the above.
that's right.
You know what? Has it been 10 years, Garrett? 11 years that we've been at this. It's been a crazy ride. It's been a lot of fun, and like Garrett said, we kind of were new to the adventure of it, but man, it caught our attention, and we jumped in with both feet, and it's been an amazing ride. We joke about being Team 801 because Garrett and I were born and raised in northern Utah, and of course the roots of Gunwerks are in Wyoming. And so there's always been this fun competitiveness between the company and the employees of who's a little smarter, who's a little better looking, who shoots, all the things. And so Garrett and I, for a lot of years, we're considered Team 801, which is kind of like the little stepbrother of the Gunwerks family. But as you can see, Garrett's up there. He's full time, and he's pretty much converted to the 30-07, even though in his heart he's always an 801 team member.
That's right. That's a true story.
No, I've always looked up to you guys and thought of you as close friends, and I respect what you've done in the industry, what you've done for your company, and I'm excited to always see your adventures and where you're at. Like you say, when you guys are together, I'm sure there's an adventure, and there's going to be more stories than you might see just on social media. But I want to talk a little bit about today. Obviously, our listeners have heard of Gunwerks. Gunwerks is a powerhouse in the industry. Gunwerks builds a phenomenal product. But one thing that interests me most about Gunwerks is you guys are always innovating and coming up with something new. I remember in your old shop when I've been there in Cody, Aaron sitting down and saying, "Hey, look at this new design I'm working on for a stock, and this is how the angles are going to work." I'm like, this is like engineering, architectural talk. This isn't gunsmithing and just here's a lathe and a barrel, right? So I was always intrigued by his brilliant mind to continue pushing the envelope on what's possible. And what is new? I mean, we're coming into a crazy time in the world, I'll say, where we can't get ammunition, we can't get components. Supply chains are a disaster. How are you guys responding to that? And where is Gunwerks at? What are you working on?
I'll jump in and chat about that a little bit. You're right, Aaron. His mind is it's pretty neat. He's the smartest guy in the room in a lot of places, and I wouldn't admit that if he was on the call because his head just gets big and doesn't do anybody any good. But he really is. A lot of people will get into this business for their love of hunting and passion for the outdoors, but Skip, that's his middle name, that's what we call him. He would rather be in front of the computer engineering the next rifle system or coming up with the next platform or the next concept than being out on a hunt. And that might not always be true, but his passion lies in developing industry leading products, and he's good at it. He's like you said, you sat with him, you could just tell right away that there was something different there. And we're working on, heck, we have product plans through 2026 of what he's got cooking for the next rifle systems and the next optic systems. And that's fun. There's a lot of work, and the work is never done around here. But in the short term, in answer to your question, there's going to be a couple neat things coming out on the rifle side of Gunwerks. The optics space and Revic is going to get some new announcements this year, which should be pretty fun. We'll be training in a couple different locations, a couple different venues, I think this year, which is exciting part of our business. Kregg and I, you talk about some of the adventures where we've been around the world together, doing some of these training events with customers, and that part of our business is a lot of fun. It's very educational, it's very informative, but it's actually a lot of fun. As you know, Austin, you get to connect with your customer in a very close setting, whether it be you do a little guiding, you're the trade show floor, the consulting. We're similar in that the vast majority of our business goes direct. We have a smaller dealer network that's growing, but we get to interact with those customers on a daily basis, and that gets pretty fun when you get that close relationship with your customer.
Now, are we to the point where does Gunwerks have rifles in stock on the floor ready to sell? What does the lead time work like? I know if you're not in that, it's hard to know where you guys are at, but there's always guys looking for next year, this season coming up, getting a new rifle system, where are you telling your customers you're at right now?
100%. Well, it's scary right now. If anybody gives you a lead time in our business, they're giving you a guess more so than ever. And I don't mean any disrespect to ourselves or any of the competitors, but the supply chain for everybody is just in a mess right now. And materials, it's no good for anybody. And so when you hear a lead time, what you're hearing is what their average build time was last year, which doesn't do much for you this year. Having said that, we have this newer facility that we're in. We've been gearing towards this for years to put us in a position to, bring operations in-house, put ourselves in a better position for raw materials and to be a little more self-sufficient. Vertical integration, you hear that a lot. That's what we've been working towards, and it's working. But in answer to your question, yes, we've got 65, brand new perfect rifle systems, guns that if you were to send a client today for us for the elk hunt they're going on this fall, we would counsel them and say, hey, this is what we would run. We have that gun literally on the shelf right now, because we're getting to that point right now where if you call, New Mexico just posted last week, right? And if you call a custom gun manufacturer this week and start talking guns, they're pinched up a little bit about it's already in the hunting season when they're going to get that. Yep. But we work really hard to have some of our higher selling SKUs on the shelf. The ammo situation is another element of that. We've worked very hard we've rationed over the last year. You might have wanted to buy 2 cases, Austin, and we said, well, sorry, man, take the 5 boxes, go on your hunt, good luck. And if you need more, come back to us. And we don't like that position, but nobody went without ammo last year, right? Which is good. So nobody went without, even though somebody would have taken 3 or 4 or 5 cases if we would have sold it to them. We pulled it off the website. You can't find it on the website. And in fact, if you don't shoot one of our rifles, we said, well, we appreciate you thinking of us, but we're just not going to be able to satisfy your ammo this year. You're going to need to try something different. But our allegiance is to our customer base and those shooting systems. And for the time being, it's working.
It is funny every morning we start our day off looking at some ammo sites, seeing what's available. Everybody's still in this weird stockpile phase, and the calibers rotate. Every couple months, you start seeing calibers back on the shelf, and then pretty soon they're gone again. And it definitely is a mess. But like you say, as you get closer to the month of May, we're all thinking about upcoming seasons. And, oh no, am I going to have what I need? And that's all gear. Right? This is not just the firearm and ammunition industry. This is everything. You think you can get your pair of boots, and it's not available.
Right. Yep.
So pretty crazy. Kregg, tell me a little bit about what you are most looking forward to, say, this season coming up. It's right around the corner. I know, Kregg, you're always chasing your family around and making sure you're a great dad. I guess you're not a grandpa yet. Is that fair to say?
Not yet. Man, it's always, this time of year, you got your hopes up for, I'm going to go all these places and draw all these tags. And then it usually ends up you're on a general season deer hunt with about half the other population, just out there enjoying the mountains. So a good question. I don't know. I've got applications in a few different places, and I don't have anything on the radar quite yet that I can just say, to come back in September. Last year I had a pretty good tag in Wyoming, and of course that amazing adventure with Garrett that he was lucky enough to let me tag along with in Nunavik. But it was a good year last year. We'll see what's coming. But to be honest with you, Austin, I'm waiting for you to kind of inspire me through this podcast and give me some advice on where to go and what to do. It doesn't take much to get this guy's heart pumping. So if you've got a nice little spot, in southern Utah somewhere where you can find a 3-point, probably listen.
I'm sorry, you can't hunt deer in southern Utah. There's none left, as we say. So.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. Keeping up with how things are going on tag numbers are just crazy. Every state is either losing deer or blaming the drought or whatever it may be. But we're telling guys, just don't wait has become our motto. It used to be apply, and now we're saying, yes, still apply, but don't wait to go on these hunts you've been planning
Yeah.
or waiting to go on. I mean, I know we've talked about hunts, Neal, with like caribou or sickle blacktail or moose, black bear, affordable hunts, but we're seeing these opportunities stripped or lost, across Canada and Alaska. A lot of these where if you were sitting on it, say, I'll go one of these years, I'm going to try to draw my mule deer tag. No, you should probably go on these big hunts sooner than later because the opportunities are being lost.
Definitely caribou, especially as we're seeing this year. The question of the herd sustainability and all that has been odd for years. Some of them have gone way down. Some of them are doing pretty well, but some of the units they closed to outside hunting, that's definitely going to affect a lot of people. And you have the opportunity to go, definitely take it while you can.
Yeah, I mean, you see the industry. We're kind of transitioning, I feel like, from I'm just going to wait for a trophy hunt to I want to go more often. And I know you've always been good at that, Garrett and Kregg. Like you guys, I see you just go on hunts and you go for the adventure. You go to find success, but you're really going into it not just I need the biggest and only the best. And I don't think that is always dictated by our budget per se, but it's more so dictated by our sense of adventure and what we like to do. I know I was talking to Kregg last year on your mule deer hunt, and it's like, yeah, you're grinding it out, you're trying your best, but in the end, you're just there to see some awesome country and shoot the best buck you can.
Sure. Yeah.
It was an amazing. I guess in our busy paced world, like you said, Austin, there's so many things that can distract us and take us away from actually getting in the mountains, and having a tag is that, tipping point that says, I've got to go do this. And whether it's, once in a lifetime, mule deer tag on the strip, or if it's, if it's something as simple as an antelope hunt that you can typically draw every few years in Wyoming, there's just something to that. And I don't know if Father Time teaches us that lesson, that we got to make hay while the sun shines a little bit. And having kids, maybe as often, this, you're a dad, and you've probably seen all your kids grow up right in front of your nose, and you don't even realize you've got a lot of, you only got so many miles in those knees, don't you? So I've seen you pack enough elk off the mountain, Austin, that I know how thin that cartilage is probably wearing in your knees about now. Yeah. So any opportunity we can get to go out and do it. And again, all these advancements in technology and optics, and obviously it adds to the success of what you can do out in the field. But again, you got to get out in the field in the first place. And man, it's just a good problem to have when you have a bunch of tags to fill. So yeah. I'm hoping we can do that. And Garrett and I have looked for those opportunities. We've really looked hard in the muzzleloader seasons in the past few years, because just the center fire rifle have been so difficult to draw in a lot of these, even for an average tag. And so if we were to go back in time and look at the success that Garrett and I have had, and most of it has a muzzleloader that we're packing in the field. And as much as that's probably not my favorite weapon of choice, because I scope myself more often than I'd like to admit, we've been able to put meat in the pot in about every one of those opportunities, haven't we, Garrett?
That's right. It's a true story.
Now,
we won't tell you about the misses, will we?
Yeah. Now tell me a little
bit.
There's
only one that haunts Garrett and I was the shooter and Garrett was a spotter, and it still hurts to this day, and we still have nightmares about it. But a giant bull in New Mexico, and anyway, I don't need to talk. We've all missed, right? Austin, have you ever missed?
Oh, I've missed plenty. But that's because I've shot at a lot of
stuff. Yeah.
Now,
well, that one still haunts us, but again, we've got enough success stories to probably compensate for that one.
That's right.
That's true. Now, when you look at these guys that have purchased long-range systems, I'm curious if this is a trend, or are we missing some education here? And I'll tell you what I see as part of the problem. and you tell me what you think these guys should do. So I see guys that, and this goes, let me back up a little bit. This is all socially. I feel like we're in I can buy myself out of a problem, part of our social atmosphere. Perfect example, guys say, I really don't want to go to the gym to get ready for my sheep hunt, but I'm going to buy this 90-day program, and I'm going to buy all this protein, and I'm going to buy, and see if I can buy myself to physical fitness, right? We've all seen that. Maybe we've been victim to that a little bit. So when I look at long range hunting and shooting, guys are going on these big hunts. They've made a big investment, and they say, well, I'm going to buy my way out of this and problem of I can't hit anything, I'm not a good shot, whatever it may be, I don't want to miss. So they make a significant investment on a rifle system, and they almost neglect taking it out and using it, or going to a shooting school, or actually becoming familiar with it, because I know it's going to work because they told me it works. And don't get me wrong, I know it does work, but don't you feel like a lot of guys miss that second step?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because think about mountain hunting, especially, people who finally draw that tag and have never experienced the updrafts and various different types of winds that they go into in the mountains. So you can't easily just buy that knowledge. You have to experience. Now, you can certainly pay for training and do it and get some very good knowledge on how to do that. But learning while you're in the mountains is very tough, and it eats a lot of people's lunch every year, no doubt. Last year we started doing training just outside of Cody on Sheep Mountain. We call it our Sheep Mountain training facility. We do some level 3 stuff there where you get out and it's not going to be just shooting off of a bench at a known distance. We do training where you have to actually work on getting the right setups, using support devices, learning your equipment. Cody winds are challenging all the time. I mean, what better place in the world is there to train than Cody with the situations you get here, with steep angles, amount of distance you want to shoot, and that life-changing when it comes to success on a backcountry hunt.
What do you find is the most difficult, I would say, component or skill that someone lacks when they start shooting in real world scenarios with their system? Is there something that pops out at you or comes to mind?
So the other guys probably have things they'll want to add to this, but first and foremost for me, thinking about is really being able to call the wind. Unless you live somewhere where there is wind and you gain that experience, learning how to call it is something you really need to work on to do that. And then getting good positions, working on different ways of using devices. Tripods are very popular now and they're great, but not everybody instinctively knows how to use it to their benefit and find all of that out. And whether it be that or packs or bipod scenarios, those are great things to gain from training. What else you guys want to add?
Austin, something I see, we do that, talking about the training. We started 2 weeks ago here in Cody. It's the earliest we've ever started in Cody. And we'll train through the end of October. During the winter months here, we'll be in Texas and a few other places trying to stay out of the cold here. But we train almost year round now, 2 full-time instructors. And then we have one of the sales staff or one of the other folks help out at each one of those events. We have quite the investment in training classes. Just to your exact point, just buying our rifle and our rangefinder, I mean, I can't buy the new ping driver and expect it to go 300 yards. The equipment does not do it for you. I followed Aaron real quick on a stone sheep hunt he did a few years ago, and that's a couple commercial planes into Whitehorse and then a puddle jumper and then 11 hours on horses the next day to set up spike camp. And you're way back in the middle of nowhere, and we're up going after this sheep, and I'm following Aaron thinking, how in the world does somebody book a hunt like this and not train for for months beforehand in shooting. I knew the shot we were going to be taking, it was going to be over 500 yards. It was going to have some decline to it. I knew he was on a side hill. He wasn't going to be able to get comfortable. And I just thought about all these people that get out in the field all year that don't go through this formal training. Like you said, they're going to just hopefully grab the equipment that's going to do it for them. And absolutely not is that going to work for them when they get out in the field. It's just not. Our guns shoot really well. They're very pleasant to shoot, but if you don't know how to run them, you might as well stay home. One of the biggest errors I see, or mistakes, if you will, and we all do it. Our dads or our grandpas, taught us about the 243s or 300, whatever we were taught when we were young, and we come to class, and these guys and gals that think they need to shoot a big 300 Remington Ultra Magnum, or they just come with some of this antiquated knowledge that, God bless mom and dad or wherever it came from, but it's just not correct. And weeding out some of those habits. If someone will come to class with an open mind, boy, we can get them straightened out real quick.
And some of those are old habits are just ingrained so deep into your mind. This is how I hold my shotgun, and therefore I'm going to shoot every gun like a shotgun. And I know I saw it at your shooting school when I was there a couple of years ago. I tried to have an open mind, but I came out of there shooting a gun entirely different than I did before. And I've shot plenty of rifles in my day, but I came out of there saying, I should probably do this every year if I could, just to refresh.
I think the human nature is you can walk into a gym and be like, yeah, I know how to run all this equipment. Next thing you know, you've thrown your back out, maxing out on day one. Awesome. But
Austin,
having a personal trainer that can walk you through what each set of machinery does and to warm you up, man, that's a big, big difference. And like you say, you forget from season to season, there is a lot of moving parts to this. But boy, if you can get a little bit of a refresher and some instruction, man, it goes a long way. And that's what I think sets Gunwerks apart from so many other companies out there. And I can toot the Gunwerks horn a little bit here. They've made their whole business plan around supporting the customer, not just like, hey, good luck, pat on the back, tell us about it. I mean, it's not your guide's responsibility when you show into camp to teach you what a minute of angle is, or to show you how to run a rangefinder. You should know some of those things, obviously, before you show up. And Gunwerks has definitely made an emphasis on that from day one of instructing and teaching. And I'm not an overcomplicated brain kind of a person where I need to know how it works. But boy, it's pretty user friendly to use too. And so I think that there's a lot of benefit to, the guy out there who, like you said, maybe the protein powder doesn't make sense of all the chemistry that goes behind how it's going to give you more stamina. But, some of this stuff does make sense. And we have come a long way since Grandpa, you packed a Vienna sausage and some and some water, and that's your food for the day on your deer hunt. That's kind of how I grew up. And now these products and these things is so much out there that can really benefit you. And especially as you get older and you start to like Neal said, you start to learn the wind, you start to slow down the process. It makes it so much more enjoyable too, to be out there knowing you have the gear and the equipment to make that happen. And boy, that confidence, it's like, knocking down that free throw. If you've never shot a free throw until the pressure's on and the game's on the line, it's sure hard to hit the rim, unless the muscle memory of doing it. And so, props again to Aaron and all the staff that goes into that, because there's so many moving parts to it. And it's not so much about maybe the ego that goes into it, saying that you've got it, but there's a lot of the confidence that goes into it. So anyway, that's my take on it. It's definitely, pays huge dividends. I can't imagine, like Garrett said, being on the mountain somewhere and looking over to, your guide and saying, no, where do I hold on this shot for 400 yards downhill in the wind? I don't know. I missed one time doing that, so I know how it feels, and it's rotten, terrible.
Austin, to your point about doing this every year, our curriculum, Neal jumped right to level 3 in Cody, and we've got this curriculum that's progressive, and it's not necessarily that it's entry level, up to advanced. It's just like any curriculum in life or subject. There's so much there. You got to chop it up into different sections, and I can promise you're never done learning. Like, you guys came out to that class a couple of years ago. Well, you guys need to get up on the mountain and do some of this nasty decline stuff. To Neal's point about the wind, there's a huge bull that's not on Kregg's wall right now because I missed the wind call on this muzzleloader hunt. This bull was the biggest bull I've ever seen on the hoof, and it was a shot I know Kregg can make, and I made a bad wind call, and I'm not kidding you, like, it was devastating a hike out. This thing was giant, and he was there for the take, and it's like shooting a sheet of plywood. An elk is huge, and Kregg can shoot a pie plate at 500 yards. I'm not kidding. If he takes the ramrod out before he pulls the trigger, which he's not done once before, but the guy can shoot, and it was a bad wind call on my part, and I'm into this at that point 7 years, and I promise you no one's exempt from it. But so I guess the plug is go get some training. There's a lot of good training out there. We're not the only ones in town doing it. There's some good training out there, but going once isn't enough. I promise you. Get some progressive training all the way up through shooting straight downhill in one of those Cody winds that Neal talks about. So
it's funny. I was in a first aid class recently, and the guy that was teaching us about backcountry first aid, he said, when it comes down to crunch time or in an emergency, you always default to the level of your training. Guys always say, I'm going to rise to the occasion, and I'm going to do all these things I've never done before and be really strong. Yeah. And he says that never has happened coming from his battle experience and everything. You always default to the level of your training. And I feel like that is so true in shooting and hunting. When all of a sudden the animal you thought was bedded is now spooked, and he's going to, start working his way up the hill, you're going to default back down to what you know how to do. And I've turned back to my clients or my friends so many times, and the time between the rifle coming off the pack till the trigger is pulled is where they fall apart. Yep. Getting set up, where's the rest, where's the right angle, is it this stump or is it this backpack or whatever it may be, is usually where the wheels fall off the bus, because there's no training there. There's no time scenario that they've gone through. And it's sad, because that oftentimes is your only opportunity. And if you're like us and we work for a living, maybe your only time you could afford that hunt. And why would you want to waste it because you didn't practice or you didn't go through that possibility? So there's my little plug for getting some training. I know we have a couple schools available on our website to go with you guys the end of July. We have a couple spaces available to do the long range L101, or that's the foundation course, right? And then the advanced ballistics course, the 201 course, the end of July. I know we have some space for that. Anybody listening that wants to go to those schools, you got to get on our website. We've got all the information there on how you can get signed up for that. But it's probably some of the best money you're going to spend this year. I know I've talked to so many guys. They're like, I'm just going to spend this extra cash I've got on ammunition and stock it up in my safe. Well, trust me, they're still making ammunition. Yeah. They're just kind of slow at it. But you need to invest in yourself if you want to have a good season this year.
And if you default to your basic training, which is, just hold a little off their back and send it, you're not going to make it.
And there's nothing more sad than that. There really isn't. Tell me a little bit. Let's switch topics over to technology. It's become a hot point in a lot of these states. I know Utah, we're just starting to discuss it again, meaning fair chase, ethics, should we restrict weapons to give more opportunity? I know it's on New Mexico. It just came up for public comment again. They're talking about pulling scopes off of muzzleloaders and going more primitive. I'd like to get your personal insight in that. Obviously, Gunwerks is going to use as much technology as possible to make the most perfect system for you. But if we start looking at what some of these states are doing, what is your personal take on restricting more technology for some of these hunts?
I'm a fan of technology. Ahead in so many ways over the years. And the thought of, while I like the idea of primitive seasons, states that don't allow you to use a jacketed bullet and sabos and things like that for muzzle loaders, go back to the good old cap and lead ball. I just don't see how that's good for the animals. You're going to wound so many more animals because terminally they just don't work as well as what we've developed over the years and improved on. Now, obviously, there are some limits to that. And, you think of the tracking point systems and so on that, where you have a rifle, you set up, you pull the trigger and it fires for you when it's ready and all that. Okay, maybe that's a bridge too far. But going back to technology, especially in bullets and so on, that just don't terminally work as well, I don't agree with it personally.
And that comes from a lot of, you've been in the bullet world for a long time. You know more about bullets than all of us could ever learn, right?
Yeah, there's a whole lot that's been achieved over the last 100 years. And why would we want to take a step backwards in that just in the name of fair chase, that's not going to be as lethal and not going to be as good at killing game quickly.
I think that's a good point. Garrett, what's your opinion from your view on, can we police ourselves as hunters with the use of technology? How far is too far? Should we expect states to restrict us on that, or should that be left to the hunter?
That should be left to the hunter. Everybody's 243 in their states that they've had for 30 years shoots as far as our guns. I will promise you, if you point them in the same direction and pull the trigger, the bullet's going to go as far. Now, we're very competent at knowing exactly where that bullet's going to hit all the way down the trajectory curve, but everybody's rifles shoot a long ways. I think this concept of technology boils down to giving, what kind of advantage are we giving to the hunter, and how fair or unfair is it? But where does the debate end? Camouflage does that. Binoculars, 10 by 42 binoculars and spotting scopes and, scents and trees. There's just, the debate can get so big about the advantage that we are giving ourselves as hunters over the animal, and who's going to step in and try and be the judge of where that line should be drawn. That debate gets a little tricky. And I think, where you're talking is these trail cameras that are getting images to our cell phones real time. And I get it. Times change and technology changes, and I think they're good conversations to be having, but rangefinders have been around for a really long time. They really have. If some states want to have some, I think what they're seeing is some of their other seasons are having these higher success rates. What maybe was a 40% success rate is now 80, 85%, 90%. I think one article I read was the muzzleloader season was having as high a success as the center fire. And that might require them to pivot and do some tag allocations and restructure some of those things. But the debate, I think, gets pretty tricky when we talk about giving ourselves the advantage over the animal. It's not just as cut a dry of, do we outlaw long range rifles? Everybody's rifles shoot a long way. And to Neal's point, if we're just going to put a 3 to 9 on them, you can still try and take a poke just as far. I've been out on these hunts. We used to hunt the Dutton and with the family, and it's one of my fondest memories, hunting with the nieces and nephews. And we shoot little 2 points, right? And those are good times, but bumping into some of these guys I watched a gentleman shoot probably 13 or 14 times at this buck at 400 yards, just sat and watched him. And I went over to him after to see what he was doing, but no dialing on the scope. He had no idea what ballistics he was doing. I think he had 2 different types of ammo sitting there, but just what a terrible reputation or name he would give to us folks that would put in the time and effort to make a 400-yard shot. 400-yard shot's an unethical shot in certain conditions, but in some conditions, anybody can make that shot, no problem at all. And so just for the state to come in and say, well, 500 yards is too long or 1,000 yards is too long. I've been in a spot where 200 yards is too long. And so sportsmen are responsible men and women in a lot of cases, they can police themselves, and they should.
Well stated. Are you running for governor or?
Yes, trying. Don't tell anybody yet.
No, that sounds good. I appreciate that. And, that it comes down to being responsible. And sometimes we let jealousy get in the way as hunters, and we think that we're entitled to something, or someone else shouldn't be entitled to something else. And we can't let that get in the way. Kregg, I'd like to get your personal opinion, and I want everybody's opinion. But let's jump over to this new rangefinder. I've used it, the BR4 from Revok. It's awesome. The app is really easy to use. But are you more of a yardage turret guy or an MOA turret guy? What are you going to run? Are you going to get a ballistic turret with yardage printed, or are you going to go MOA and use the rangefinder?
Okay, I'm gonna have you take a guess, Austin. You know me, right? I want you to say, in a pinch, what am I going to go to as a default?
Well, since you only hunt one place and you never travel, and you never go to different elevations, you're just going to hold over and pray, right?
Yeah, for sure. Now, again, I kind of, with all the technology and all the advancements, I sometimes just take a step back and maybe dumb it down a little bit for me. And this is partly, by necessity for my own brain capacity, but it's also because I've got kids and I guide a little bit and I help people, and anything I can do to simplify a process, I'm all about it, making it easier on everybody. And like you said, when you take the rifle out of the pack and you're going to make that shot, that's when everything starts to happen fast. And in those situations, you don't have time to second guess or to think. And being around a lot of hunters and a lot of shooting school students and stressful situations, if you will, and maybe some shooting competitions we've done, the ranges typically that we're going to shoot are not so far that a minute of angle, quarter-minute click calculation has to come into play. Most of the time, you're ranging to a distance. We're familiar with yardages. And so a BDC, a drop compensated yardage turret, would be my choice personally. The tricky part about a yardage turret is it's much more involved than just saying this ammo should shoot this fast through this barrel. So just, send off for a turret and put it on. It's obviously a little more complicated process because you've got to shoot some data and find out how that bullet shoots in your rifle. And so there is some steps out there for the guys that are listening to this for the first time that think, well, if I just get a yardage turret, I'll be able to shoot 600, 700, 800 yards, no problem. Obviously, there's some research that goes into making sure your data and your ballistics match how your rifle and how your barrel shoots that ammo. And that's what's so important about the consistency. And when Garrett said, there's ammunition, nobody went without last year for our customers, for our clients. There's a lot to be said in knowing your equipment and simplifying it in that respect. So whether it's, a muzzleloader I'm shooting or a 6.5 Creedmoor, a 6.5 PRC, a 7 long range Magnum, I have a yardage turret on every one of those because again, my default is to yardage. And if I can see 375, I want to dial to 375. That makes simple math to me. The calculations are easy. Again, it takes a little guesswork out of the calculation to it, but I'm not opposed to either. But that's my default. My quick answer there for you, Austin, is when in a pinch and when it's on the line, it's just super easier for me to translate to whoever's in front of me that I'm helping shoot or myself to just, it's a click up. They've walked 10 yards. It's another click on the turret. Super simple, super easy. And then you can concentrate on your breathing and your front and rear, your bag support and your trigger squeeze and your parallax and all those other things that come into play rather than, did I dial my turret right? Am I one revolution high? So, I wanted to simplify it all. So you've been in that situation too, where you've been behind the, the rifle with somebody and all of a sudden you look down and you're shooting 375 yards and yet the dial on the turret says 7.5 and you're just like, what is going on? What just happened? And so that's my answer. I think BDC that's my bread and butter.
What about you, Garrett?
Yeah, we're big fans around here. All of our rifle systems that go out are the majority go out with a ballistic turret. with that ballistic turret is yardage and MOA. There's an MOA scale on the bottom as well. That serves a couple purposes if you're shooting some extreme distances past that first revolution of yardage. But one thing neat about that rangefinder you're talking about, Austin, is in that display, when you grab the range, it's making a correction for some of the environmentals. It's making a direction compensation, but it's going to spit you out the correction in yardage where you need to spin that turret to, and it's going to flash the MOA correction as well. So in the old unit, which you played with a little bit, you used to have to choose which output, we called it, that you wanted to see. And so you had to make more of a committed decision to which solution you wanted. And in the heat of the moment when we're shooting, you can't switch back. It takes too long. But this new unit now will spit you both of them. My sales pitch to everybody out there is have a yardage turret on your gun, because at one point or another, if your technology lets you down, you have to make a correlation between that yardage, the environmental conditions, and your ballistics. The rangefinder does it with the press of a button. And so if you're running MOA, you need a device or devices to combine all that data into the shooting solution. We all nowadays, somebody around us has a pair of range finding binoculars, or there's another, what we call a dumb rangefinder, or one that doesn't give a ballistic solution inside 400 yards. That's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect for your shooting condition. So my sales pitch is run a yardage turret that's got an MOA scale on there.
What about you, Neal? Do you have the same opinion, different opinion?
It's hard to improve on what Senator Wall just added there. So my background's just a little different. I love the idea of BDC, and I want to do that, but I've not really been able to do very much of that because for the last 14 years, most of the hunts I went on were sponsor equipment. So whatever rifle company would provide a rifle, a different optic would come in. We had the ammo Hornady and so on. So like, it was very rare that I got time to use my own equipment a whole lot. And you know, some hunts use mills, some MOA. Kind of had to get to where you were comfortable just going with whatever. And BDC, for the reasons Garrett gave, is a really good system, especially if you can focus on that system and get proficient with it and so on. And the ability of the BR4 to take into consideration a change in environment from what your dial was cut to what it actually is, or all that you could run into in the field, which is tremendous. So I'll never forget 13, 14, I forget exactly. I went to the Whittington Center to a Gunwerks class where we did a couple days of training and then did a pronghorn hunt. At Hornady, we were proofing out what would become the ELDX bullet at the time. And I don't believe it had a name. It took a whole other year before we actually launched it, but we were there actually shooting it. It shot great. We wanted to get some terminal experience with it, and that worked out very well also. But we went pronghorn or hunting, and the pronghorn I ended up shooting was 850 yards. And at that time, the precursor to the BR4, the BR2, is what we were using. And you know, the distance to the goat was 850 yards. My dial to was 800 because it did all of the math for you. And I was still able to use that BDC, and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was right on the money. And luckily in the wins we had there, we had both Aaron and Dave Emery from Hornady calling wins. So that definitely helped with the confidence level a little bit too.
Sure.
Oh, that's good. Now, do you guys have a trip planned to go back to Africa? I'm curious about that. You guys have been over there a few times, I believe, with John X. So you've been with a bunch, and that just seems like a target-rich environment to go shoot long range and have a good time. Are you going back again? Is that one of your favorite hunts? Tell me about that.
It is. We are. We take two groups every year. We've got two groups going next month, actually. It's been Kregg started this actually off about 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago, and it hasn't stopped since. And we've taken two groups for the last few years. It got a little rocky during COVID, but we still snuck a few people in and out as the borders opened and closed. But yeah, we're sending folks over there, and you're right, it is a target rich environment. It is a lot of fun to be with somebody that kind of embraces the idea of shooting some longer distances, has the territory and the place to do it. If you hunt up in the Karoo, it reminds me of Wyoming. You have some of that rolling hills, high desert, badlands type stuff, and it is tricky conditions. All of his guides can run the equipment. They can call wind. They can spot for you. It makes it a lot of fun. You can get 10 years worth of education in that week and a half worth of shooting. These hunts we do around here, you go for 7 days and you pull the trigger one time. Over there, you're pulling the trigger before lunch, after lunch, and again 2 times the next day. And you can really gain some education by doing an event like that. A lot of fun.
And they still allow Kregg, like he's invited to come back if he ever wants to. He's not like on a blacklist in South Africa or what?
Yeah, well, depends. We don't talk about that, but yeah, there's ways to get him in.
Yeah. Somebody's got to pack. That's what I'm there for.
Somebody's got to pack.
That's right.
Hard up for
right.
cheap labor over there, are they?
What an amazing place. Yeah, you should go. That's a place where you would feel comfortable taking your family to and your kids, and what a great family environment as well, that you can do that whole safari with your family for about the price of a high-end hunt individually. So keep that in mind if you're listening, and put it on your radar, put it on your list.
You're still going to teach me how to choose which kid to take. I still haven't quite learned how to do that with my hunts. It's tough.
I'm still figuring that out as well, but I think my oldest kid is going to be the most spoiled, hands down, of all of them. I think as it trickles down the list a little bit, although my youngest is my daughter, and so she might be the one that gets the Cape Buffalo when all said and done over everybody else. So we'll see.
Now, Garrett, we ran a picture of your Alaska muskox that you took in our magazine a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
When you went out there, that was a fall hunt, but how far was your shot? I'm curious there. Muskox, it's a different hunt, I know, and you work for a long-range gun company, but how far was your shot when it came down to it?
Well, it's funny. We spotted these things at, 2 counties away, and it was quite the pursuit to get to them. And they were feeding away from us, and wind was howling, and it was getting later in the day. And I laid down the first time at 750 yards. And it's a huge target, right? And I had been shooting a bunch before. I'd been shooting a bunch. This PRC I took shot really good. And Kregg smacked me and said, "Hey, get up. I don't want to do this again tomorrow. Let's get closer." So we picked all the gear up. He was filming, and we got to within about 430 yards. But they were feeding toward a rise. And not knowing the terrain, we didn't know where they were headed and what that was. And so, again, I had been practicing a ton in the wind. This gun shot like a house of fire. And so I just knew at 400 yards, we had the setup to make a good shot. So I think 425 was the shot. So
nice.
Yeah.
And Kregg was there to make sure you didn't screw up and shoot a cow or anything, right?
That's right. He was.
So we spotted these muskox off. I've got this little. I wrote a journal. I have a journal of all our days and what we did, and I just logged it. And so I had made a note in this. I actually looked at it this morning because I knew this might come up. But we spotted those muskox at 12 o'clock, about straight up noon. Garrett's first shot was at 6:45 p.m. So it took us that long to get there, and we had to stop for Garrett to eat salmon berries about every 30 to 40 minutes though on the stalk over. If you know what a salmon berry is, look it up.
Yeah,
it's like
the
raspberry strawberry of the tundra. Anyway, so it took a long time. There was a lot that went into that. And again, that time of year, it doesn't stop blowing. It doesn't stop raining. And so I did probably kind of touch him on the shoulder and say, "Garrett, hey, let's make this one count," because we've got
a lack of confidence. But you know what? After hearing stories, we worked so much harder. The other folks we helped pick up, they got out of the boat and tipped this thing over and back it went in. And Kregg and I have a knack for doing things the hard way, but boy, we worked a lot harder than what I think we probably should have. But boy, did we make a memory. Woo, we have some stories. It's for another podcast for another time. Probably when our and our folks aren't listening, but still, it was quite the adventure.
Hey, any hunts that happened in the last 2 years, out of state or out of country, there's plenty of stories
Yeah.
with COVID and vaccination cards and everything else. There are plenty of stories to go around if you talk to someone that's still been hunting. I talked to a guy that's like, yeah, I'm getting ready to go to Russia. I'm like, you're going to Russia right now? Well, yeah, they're still giving visas out, so I'm going. I'm like, holy smokes. Okay. Well, I'll probably be staying here, but maybe that's just me.
Right.
So,
right.
When your options for lodging on your way and you haven't even got there involve the Igloo of Enchantment and what was the other place?
Yeah, that's all I remember, man. That's all I remember.
Yeah. So, but hey, what I'll never forget is eating Mountain House mac and cheese and muskox tenderloins on the tundra together.
That's right.
Looking
That's
at that, I mean, you can't plan that to happen.
No, that was the trophy for sure.
No, you guys have. I've always looked up to you guys as appreciating what hunting really is and making sure you have a good time. And I just hope you invite me to come on one of these hunts someday. I'll just be waiting around with my box of ammo and my bag packed.
Keep your phone on. Keep your phone on.
Keep it on. And maybe someday I'll move to Wyoming. Seems like a good state to live in.
There you go. There you go.
So I sure appreciate your guys' time today. And this has been fun to catch up and see how things are going. It's a crazy world, the hunting industry. And like we say, if you've learned anything, you need to go now and book that hunt and get on it. Get some education, get some training, because you're not getting any younger. And as you can learn, Kregg's a good poster child for this. You're probably not getting in any better shape as you get older. So
yeah, he
doesn't even have a rebuttal to say about the shape he's in or nothing. So I guess Kregg just.
No, I have nothing, but yeah, I agree. It's so funny as you get a little older, you start paying attention to those infomercials about like joint replacement therapy and all of that nonsense. You're like, yeah. I actually got prescription glasses for the first time last month, Austin.
Wow.
It's like, so we'll see if that plays into, looking through the scope and seeing your crosshairs like the good old days of not packing glasses. But it's funny when we teach all these guys through the shooting classes, they'd always kind of look up at you the same way and be like, "Bud, you can talk trash right now, but you just wait, it's gonna hit you." And so we're all getting there, but thank goodness for the opportunities we do have, and thank goodness that there's companies like you, like Huntin out there, and these application services, because it's so many moving parts. It's so hard to keep up and know where you can go and what rules have changed. So, props to you and all your guys, and for fighting the good fight on our behalf. And we're just glad to be part of the industry and be part of riding for the brands. Where we couldn't do it without each other. So, thanks for having us, and thanks for listening and not giving us too much of a hard time.
No, we appreciate you guys, and we'll put links to everything you got, shooting schools and new systems on the show notes here, and we'll get this out. So appreciate you.